Welcome to Storytime with Earth.Otherwise. Today we'll be looking at the bottom of the well. For those of you who don't know, I'm Earth.Otherwise, and welcome to Game Review. I'll inform everybody here, new and old, that the review contains my personal opinions about the game, and not an objective analysis. For that there's the Let's Analyze series. So stop me if you've heard this one before. A dark and gritty story using the motif of Alice in Wonderland. If a couple of movies, books, and video games didn't immediately spring to mind, congratulations on not being a native English speaker. Of course, it's not a direct retelling. The Bottom of the Well, or Downwell as I personally like to call it, is about a girl retelling a dream to her friend, imaginatively named M. Hatter. And if all that cliche didn't turn you off, then you probably want to go ahead and get it right now. It's free after all. Now let's see how the game presents itself to the world. Googling The Bottom of the Well gives us a Steam page and an itch.io page, but it also gives us a bunch of Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time wiki pages and walkthroughs for the mission at the bottom of the well in that game. But at least on YouTube, you can find a few playthroughs. A shame that none break 10,000 views, meaning that, as I know well from my playthrough of it, this game doesn't work very well for a video series. But you can find it, and once you do, you pop onto the Steam page, and the trailer starts up. The trailer is just a recording of the beginning of the game. Needless to say, this does not raise any confidence. Visual novels, or in this case, a choose-your-own-adventure story, don't video well. There's no action, and there's nothing from the story except the very beginning that you can show without spoiling one of the endings. So what I'm saying is that the trailer is shit. It doesn't tell you anything about why you'd want to play the game. Probably would have been better if it were like a movie trailer and did some voiceover, retelling us a little about the story and leaving a cliffhanger. The description, thankfully, is much better, as is to be expected, and as is to be expected is more representative of the story, though it is a bit lackluster and clinical. You think that from a self-proclaimed writer, they would put more oomph into their game description. It's functional, but it's only functional. The Bottom of the Well is on Steam and itch.io, so it's pretty easy to find and download. Making it free means there's no reason you shouldn't at least try it out before, if you don't dislike the gameplay footage that is my Blind Run series. Download and installation is quick, as the game is quite small, so you can begin the game immediately. You'll probably finish one or two runs in your first playthrough inside an hour, and deciding to play further, you'll start to see one of the problems I have with the game. But before you start picking up on the negatives, you will see a simple red, black, and white Alice in Wonderland motif that the game is going for. Whether or not it uses the style to the best of its abilities is yet to be seen. The main screen of the game is fairly simple. Text box at the bottom, Alice and the Hatter portraits on either side, HUD up top, and the main viewing area will be filled with one of the about 6 different pictures that make up nearly the entirety of the visual in this visual novel. It's clear that the artist put a lot of effort into making a couple important pieces of artwork, but in reality they probably should have spent more time on quantity and less time on quality. Certainly that would make the game look less pretty, but I was hoping for more character portraits, more landscapes, even some action shots, but we're left with a completely static visual experience, left only with the writing to give us any clue as to what's going on. This is why I call The Bottom of the Well a choose-your-own-adventure story rather than what the developer calls it, which is a visual novel. Quite frankly, there isn't much visual in this novel. But when you aren't reading, you'll probably be listening to the music, if you haven't turned it off. You couldn't listen to a podcast while playing, not understand both it and the game, but you could supplement your play with your own music, as there's no audio cues that you need to listen for. And boy, that music sure is music. There's a piano and other instruments. Better probably just to ignore it, really. I'm sure some artist belted it out thinking it was pretty good, but you're going to be reading for most of the time, and I personally can do that in silence just as well as with ambient background noise. It's okay. It's not terrible and doesn't detract from the story, but it doesn't add anything either. I'm not even sure if there are multiple tracks or if there's just one playing on a loop. While you're ignoring the music, you'll probably end up ignoring the visual part of this visual novel just as much. There are many maybe a dozen different pieces of art, most of which are uncolored background art. It works for telling you at a glance where you are if you have the uncontrollable urge to take a 4-hour dump and forget where in the story you are, I suppose. So I guess I'm about to get into the spoiler territory. If what I said so far has made you go, yeah, I could see myself playing this thing, go ahead and pause the video, pick it up on Steam right now, download it and play it. I'll wait patiently. You should be done in about a half an hour unless you want to go for the true ending. The story hook, the main thing that's supposed to draw your readers into this kind of thing, is as follows. Alice has an unsettlingly lifelike dream about the end of the world and recounts it to a friend. Yes, my dear viewer, if you choose to accept this task, must make the correct choices and design your dream Alice to survive the coming apocalypse and sniff out the true ending of the dream. In so doing, you will reveal what is hidden. It's different. I mean, I don't play visual novels, but as far as I can tell, recounting a dream isn't a very common trope. Probably because quite a few people will hear you say the words, "I had this dream last night," and immediately respond with, "Shut up, it wasn't real, I don't care," though they might be more polite about it. You also can't save the game mid-run, so you're going to have to set aside the full half hour for a run if you're planning on playing. That's not a lot to ask, but if you're reading through some juicy new dialogue and you get called away and want to save and quit, you're shit out of luck. I hope you can remember the branches you took to get there. For a choose-your-own-adventure game, there doesn't need to be a tutorial as such, but the game also doesn't tell you much of anything about how to better prepare for a run. For example, since I thought all, if not most, of the choices would be the same no matter what, I always played with the default Alice. Of course, looking up a guide, I find that it's far easier to get the true ending with a custom Alice that can better get through the hurdles that the story throws at her. But nowhere in the story is there a line that I can find where Alice says that she would have succeeded if only she were stronger or if only she were better supplied. You learn things about the world as you go through the game, but if there are hints as to where you are supposed to go for the true ending, I couldn't find them in the story. Now I may be about as perceptive as a horse under a blanket, but not even a single obvious hint for those of us who aren't good at picking up subtleties. What is obvious, though, is that you'll be dealing with the usual gambit of people looking out for number one. From things to queen bees to enigmatic douches, this story runs the gambit of people who can screw you over during an apocalypse. Overall, though, both the player character, non-player characters, and the Hatter are fairly uninteresting. They all have very simple human motives that aren't all that compelling. I never felt bad for staying with or abandoning or even dooming characters. I never really connected with any of them, and I'm pretty sure that's not just me. Perhaps it comes from the fact that you know that you'll just meet them again in the next run, but perhaps it's also because you never spend any real time learning about any of the characters or their motivations. Hell, even the sad ending, where you spend all of your time with Alice's boyfriend, isn't all that good at making them seem like a functional, loving couple. The world of The Bottom of the Well is a dream retold by the dreamer about bombs dropping on some American city. It's fairly realistic, even for a dream, at least that's how it's described. You die of radiation poisoning, and getting the true ending is near impossible if you aren't Sherlock. But for those who are willing to die dozens of times with no hint of what the correct direction is, they will most likely enjoy the ending. Though it is a bit dumb and anticlimactic from my perspective, at least the world is consistent. Hell, it has to be, or each run will net you nothing to use for your next run. Though that's already the case in most instances. Gameplay itself is as basic as you get. You read a bunch of text and choose an option from the available options. As a choose-your-own-adventure story, it's about as standard as it gets without holding a book in your hands. I'm pretty sure it's just me, but the story doesn't give me any real reason to replay it, except if I want to find the true ending. Sure, you can take different routes, but I'm the kind of person who prefers to just read a story once. But I know that this is an uncommon opinion. The story has reread value, so it can keep you interested for a few hours. At least until you get bored with it or frustrated that you can't find the correct answer. Furthermore, there's only one real breakpoint in the game, which is at the end of a run. This is dangerous because it doesn't leave the player anticipating their next playthrough. Likely, since the story is so short, they will play it all at once and then forget about it. Timing how long your game can be difficult, but I believe that the bottom of the well is a bit too short for its own good. For those who really enjoy the writing, and those who really enjoy Choose Your Own Adventures, this is a must-have. But if you're not into either, then you'll just be wasting your time. The bottom of the well is an experience that won't enrich your day, but it will kill some time for you. It's free, so if you're not risking anything, just pick it up. The bottom of the well's strongest feature has to be its writing. It doesn't have much of a choice when it comes to this, because only the artwork could really compete in a choose-your-own-adventure story. But if the artwork was good enough to do so, it would change the very genre of the work into a visual novel. As a choose-your-own-adventure story, I hesitate to say it has gameplay at all, and there are quite a deal of choices. So you aren't lacking for choices. Where the bottom of the well is weak is that finding the true ending is a lot of guesswork. For a better example of how to do this, I suggest looking up Stories: The Path of Destinies. If you're just planning on finding the different ways that Alice can die, pro tip, radiation poisoning is most of them, then you're going to be pretty unsatisfied with a few playthroughs. A single run isn't that long after all, and you could probably fly through this game in a couple of hours at most. Unfortunately for the bottom of the well, it's kind of banking on you wanting to reach the true ending, much like a regular choose-your-own-adventure stories. However, it's far too difficult to do so for the kind of story that it is telling. At the end of the day, I'm not going to play this game, but it's not like it's terrible. I don't regret it, at least. The final score for the bottom of the well is acceptable. And if you want, it's free. Go pick it up.